thank you for your deep discussion tonight and walking through all of those ordinances. We know that was a lot of work. A couple of things we just want to touch on. We'll be very brief. We'll take about 3 minutes. First off, I hope that someone informed you that those ordinances came not only from City Township, but before that they were from Pearson Township, and before that they were from Casanova Township, and before that they were from Palmer Township. So those were not drafted in accordance with just City. So I hope you know that you have that background, that these several townships have seen these, and none of those townships are really qualified to have a wind project in their area due to those ordinances. So I want to walk you through a couple of things that'll give you a little bit more information as you look to kind of the questions that you had tonight. I took some notes of them, and hopefully some of these will answer the questions that are outstanding, but I certainly agree with your position to get legal advice. So first, the piece on the very front page, you'll see some memo from Vestas. That is not from Apex Energy. This is from a manufacturer that makes these products, the wind turbines. You'll see at the very bottom, highlighted in yellow for you, there's a statement there that they have made that says they don't recommend a tip height. They're not recommending that. What they do is they go based off industry standards and research that suggests a tip height as far as away from residences and things like that. So their quote is at the bottom there, and they say that they rely on organizations like the American Wind Energy Association to make recommendations. So we would encourage you to do that same homework. Use those organizations to guide your planning. If you look through the packet, just open up to the very first page. When you're talking about tip height, this gives you a map specific to your community for Pine Township. The very first map, if you see at the top, I highlighted it for you. It says 1.5. That's times tip height. Those green spots on that map show you what may be applicable should those landowners choose to participate in a wind project. If you turn to the next page, you will see the highlighted area, or up in the same spot, 2.5. So if your ordinance read 2.5 from tip height, that's how much green space would be available for a developer to put a wind turbine. This would be true for any developer, not just Apex, any developer that would come in. The next one, if you choose 3 times tip height, you see a map of how much green space is available for a developer to come in and develop a wind farm in your community. And finally, the last page shows if your ordinance were to read 4 times tip height. This is the software that we use to analyze the area. It gives you a very clear picture of what that looks like. In the ordinance you read tonight, I believe the wording was 5 times tip height. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
You can imagine why we didn't make a handout for that. Okay, the next one. You'll see this one is actually from Apex. You see it's got a large colored turbine in the front. When people ask, what determines those maps? How do you make those maps? What determines them? Well, the first thing is we have to take off the setbacks from roads. Those are pretty standard, so that's the first map that you see. Those are the setbacks from the roads. Turn the page, you get the setbacks from anybody who chooses not to participate. If they choose not to be a participant in the project, we of course zone up around them. The next section, it shows if you add a house to any of the areas that are being leased, we have to set back from that as well. Turn the page again. We avoid disrupting pivot systems. If you look at that map, you see all those areas that were white are getting smaller and smaller. Next one, we avoid wetlands and environmental areas. You will see, and this is pre-study, so this is before we've studied the exact count in the area. We still have to do that. It takes some time for us to study it once we go through this process. But this is just from like a GIS study of what we know now. So you can see there's very little white space left. And if you turn to the last page, you'll see the green area is what shows buildable area. This is an opportunity, whether the community chooses to take it or not. The green area is the area that's left, minus the setbacks that I've just discussed. But we're not done yet. If you turn to the next page, there is a list of additional setbacks that we have not yet discussed, which is airspace, railroads, transmission lines, infrastructure, lakes, rivers, streams, communication towers such as TV, cellular, other occupied structures that are in the community, environmental and historical resources, and then of course the state land, sensitive habitat, eagles, bats, things like that, all have to be studied yet. So you can see from just this map alone how much little green space is left, and we still have all these other areas that you have to consider. And this is assuming that these landowners would take part. So I ask you to keep that in mind when you're looking at your setback guidelines, because what I heard tonight sounded a lot like exclusionary zoning. And that's concerning, of course, to us or any developer that would want to come in for economic development in your community. And in the interest of time, I'll get to the last two parts really quickly. This one here looks like this. This handout is not an Apex handout. You can get this at any point, anytime. It's from the Hanger Environmental Group out of Wisconsin. If you just simply turn to page 6, in their report, this is on sound, it simply states, Illinois, Minnesota, Wisconsin standards for sound. If you'd like to follow those are respected guidelines. Michigan is not listed there, but those are standards to consider. Okay?
This is an average. So it could be 101 day and nothing in that?
Well, it actually goes into more detail than that. It actually goes into more
That's right.
detail than that.
Nope, I don't want an average. I want to know what the highest point is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, it's just a resource, it's just a resource. The last piece is the cover letter, which is from a school district that has a wind farm in it. And these are his words, not ours. You'll see the highlighted section where he says what their 2018 revenue was. And when you combine their revenue from just their wind energy project to date, it was $711,000 in their operations and sinking fund. It was $776,000 for their debt and bond. For their special education and vocational education opportunity, they received revenue upwards of $1.3 million.
7
for
minutes.
2018.
According to a story in Daily News a couple of weeks ago, there's like over 1,000 lawsuits going
Yep.
on.
We don't want
Revenue
to
that
run
they're
it.
supposed to be getting and they're not.
Okay?
Thank you.
And there's much more depth to that, which I would be happy to explain. It's probably not for tonight, but I'd be happy to explain that to you, sir. Happy to.
The township gets less than 1% of the power from these
Those
things.
people get nothing.
So the big cities get it all. Take that crap to the city.
Yeah.
Take it.
Thank you.
Transmission line just north of Green.
So in the last 30 seconds, if I could just highlight the other
Thank
pieces that I.
Thank you.
You guys
Let's
were-
be respectful, let's let
Larry's
everybody
being-
finish.
Sorry.
Thank you. In the last couple of pieces, you'll just see some projections that are for your area. We are happy to speak with you on in more detail if you like, but they're there for your reference. And we'll be available after the meeting for any questions.
All right, thank you.